Welcome to the Veterans in Politics Talk Show. Join us every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, live stream on Facebook.
Welcome to the joint veterans endorsement interviews for judicial candidates, non-judicial candidates. On the outset, we'd like to formally recognize and thank our sponsoring organizations for making today's event possible. Judge Mary Perry, Clark County District Court, Family Division, Department P. Christine Brewer, Clark County District Court, Family Division, Department S. Veterans in Politics International, and Nevada Veterans Association. We'd also like to extend our sincere appreciation to our additional sponsors and community partners whose support helps ensure a professional, fair, and transparent endorsement process. We're honored to have you here with us today. Before we begin the interviews, I'd like to review the rules and format with you. First, each panel member will introduce themselves by stating their name and the organization they represent. After that, you'll each be given an opportunity to introduce yourselves. During that time, please include the office that you're running for and explain why you're seeking that office. Then we'll begin the interview portion. Remember, this is an interview, not a debate, so address all of your answers to us on the panel members. Be cognizant of the camera because we're for our listening audience. In the interest of fairness to all our participants, time limits will be strictly enforced. Each of you will be given 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. When you have 30 seconds remaining, you'll be shown a yellow card. And then when your time is up, you'll be shown a blue card. And at that point, you can finish your statement, and then please wrap it up at that point. Afterwards, you'll be given a minute to give a closing remark. With that, we'll start with interviews and then.
Varlin Higbee. I'm a past county commissioner from Lincoln County. It's a privilege and honor to serve on this panel.
My name is Jeffrey Lussick. I live in Las Vegas. I'm an Air Force veteran, and I'm a former Air Force judge advocate and a former district court judge in Washington State.
Tim Ross.
Veterans in Politics.
I'm here representing Veterans in Politics International.
Tim Ross. I live in Las Vegas, representing the Nevada Veterans Association.
TK Crabb, Veterans in Politics.
Martin Walker, Nevada Veterans Association. I'll start with you for the introduction, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming and being part of the interview process. I know it's long days, a lot of people for you to meet. I'm Becky Harris. I've lived in Las Vegas for about 27 years. We moved here from Fort Irwin, California, where my husband was a captain in the Army, and spent some time at both Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and Fort Irwin, California. He entered as an officer right out of graduate school, where he provided dental services to the armed forces. I don't know if you know this, but in World War II, more soldiers died of dental health-related issues than on the battlefield. So the military has gone to extensive efforts to maintain health integrity for its service members. We loved our time in the military. At that time, dentists didn't get any of the medical associated benefits that the doctors and others got, and we could not afford to live on captain's pay. So very sensitive to the way that our veterans and our armed services are treated, because I'm a veteran's wife. So he had to pursue private practice, but we loved our military life. We loved serving at Fort Irwin. Closed down the street so the kids could play while the husbands were all out playing war games 2 weeks out of the month. Moved here, got involved in community service. I'm a former Nevada State Senator. I'm the first chair of the Nevada Gaming Control Board. I decided to get involved after the county commission lost a lawsuit to a developer for $80 million. We are under-resourced in Commission District F, and I want to see that Commission District F has somebody that's going to stand up for the amenities that we need to be able to be a successful community. $15 million for a fire station. So at $80 million, you can imagine how many resources that could have paid for. So I'm here to fight for Commission District F.
I believe this is the one I'm using. My name is Justin Liebernecht. I'm running for Clark County Commission District F in the Democratic primary. I was born in San Diego. I did my undergrad in San Francisco. I did my graduate studies at NYU. And at that point, I had no money because all of those places are horrifically expensive to live. I had friends here that were kind enough to offer their spare room. After a month here, I'd found a job, a place to live, and was doing much better than I had in any of my previous incarnations. That kept me here, and I roller coastered through a couple of jobs before I settled into gaming analyst at Caesars. I did pay my union dues as a bartender, and from there I ended up being hired out by American Homes for Rent to work in housing. And for the past decade, I've been working in housing and housing-related policy, both on the Zillow Single Family Rentals Board and getting involved here. Currently, I am a consultant and freelance. I didn't like some of the things American Homes for Rent was doing and how they were behaving, so I went off with a startup, and that startup unfortunately failed. So I am self-sufficient now, and I work for that and a couple of other companies around town, including Simply Vegas, United Realty, and Life Realty. So I work directly with realtors. My attraction to the housing problem is something that I got really involved in while I was at Zillow. The policies that they put forward and the setups that they provide are very consumer-friendly in information. They don't have much to say on how housing is developed or built. Watching us expand, looking at the numbers and seeing that we're going to get another 1 million people makes me wary. And I had a similar experience when I saw the $80 million settlement. I said, I got to get involved and get started. Thank you.
We'll now begin the interview portion of today's event. I would like to also remind each candidate that we do have time limits. When you see the blue card, please wrap up your statements. With that, and also use your microphones. Okay. And we'll start with you this round.
Sorry, which one was
you?
Okay, thank you.
Honor to be here today. My first question is on budgets. That's probably going to be one of your biggest, as a county commissioner, former county commissioner, that's most of our time was taken up on budgets and spending and where money goes, where it needs to go the most. You're going to have to make some pretty tough decisions with budgets. Do you spend it on low income over here? Do you spend it on medium? Do you spend it on infrastructure? How and where would you spend your money in your district? If you get allotted so much for your budgets?
Sure. So whenever I'm dealing with a budget and figuring out how stuff flows in and flows out, the most stable pieces are the ones that we want to protect first. So the stable source of income, especially for us, are in property taxes and revenues on gaming and things like that, right? So we have these really stable parts of our budget, and then we have pieces that aren't so stable and can change. On top of that, we consistently have special projects, settlements, and things that pull out of our budget. So as we start to look at those and piece that budget together, which for fiscal year 2026, we're looking over $10 billion. It's a terrifying amount of money. To stabilize those funds, I like what we're doing now and how we've segmented them into different portions and different allotments. But as we're looking at those allotments, we have to be willing and able to move them from one segment of the budget to another based on what's most stable and will maintain the revenue. And solidifying the revenue core is the first part. The second part is stabilizing and decreasing the spending. And if we can get both of those going, we start to see this thing where our budget split comes together and we stop pulling out of the general fund for overages and past balances.
So as the former chair of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, I was responsible for a $45 million annual budget to run the agency. And one of the first things I did as chair of the Gaming Control Board was to have a broad overview of how the agency was spending money, where its revenue sources were coming from, and where we needed to make changes. I will take that same mentality with me to the commission. I think everybody here is savvy enough to know that it's a collaboration. While one commissioner can have some pretty strong opinions about the way the money should be spent, it's a collaborative effort. You've got to have a majority agree on how that money's spent. Every major stakeholder feels they're undervalued and wants to have a bigger piece of the pie. I think working on revenue levers and where money can come into the county is critically important. I think streamlining our permitting process. I'm hearing from developers that it takes far too long in the county as opposed to the city in terms of approving jobs and approving projects and things would be one place to look. I think other places to look is where we're maybe overpaying or duplicating some of our services, and then really drilling down on making those hard choices, because I agree hard choices are going to have to be made, because we can't service everything, but in Commission District F, we've got to focus on fundamentals like civil engineering, infrastructure. We have a town that doesn't even have street signs. So we need to start looking at fundamentals.
Again, my name is Jeffrey Lussick. I'm here with Veterans in Politics International. I'd like to ask you a question related to veterans issues in Clark County, because that is something that we all care about here at this panel. Many veterans and disabled veterans in Clark County have valuable military training, leadership experience, technical skills, and they all have strong work habits. But most and many still face challenges translating that experience into civilian employment opportunities, professional licensing, and there are no county hiring pathways or apprenticeships or small business opportunities here in this county. As a Clark County Commissioner, what specific steps would you support to improve employment and career opportunities for our veterans without assuming that all veterans are unemployed or underemployed?
Who would you like to respond first? Okay, yeah. Well, as the wife of a veteran who is employed in Clark County, I truly understand the quality and the caliber of the skill sets that our armed forces and our veterans can provide to the community. I am on record and I absolutely support community agreements. And I think that that's somewhere that Clark County could really begin to move the needle for employment, community benefit agreements. We need to say to people who want to contract with the county, hey, our veterans matter, and we're actually going to require that a certain percentage of the workforce is actually coming from our veteran population, because they have those civil engineering skills, they have those water skills, they have, for the health district, they have those medical skills and a variety of other skill sets. So I think community benefit agreements make sense. They don't cost the county any additional money, and it's a direct pipeline to the veteran community. While I was chair of the Senate Education Committee, I helped put in place a lot of the apprenticeships that we have throughout the state today, and I would look for ways to work with the legislature and through the county on how we might be able to set up some veteran-specific apprenticeships, because those valuable skills and all of the time that they have invested to keep us safe need to be recognized, and we need to be champions for that transition period that can sometimes be really difficult as our armed services are coming back home and trying to transition those skills into a civilian environment.
So I think that this is something that extends not just to veterans, but to also people that relocate here. When I first got here, I did have difficulty finding long-term work. It was very easy to find quick work. And I worked several bartending jobs before I was able to put my degree into play. And that was biding the time and getting through. But in this specific instance, when we're talking just for veterans, I think there's an excellent opportunity here to flip the kind of LinkedIn model, because there are a lot of jobs that people don't know about. There's a lot of jobs that veterans don't know about. There's a lot of veterans who have been in for so long and then they come out. They don't know the process to get in and apply to the job, set up their resume based on their military career. And so if you can flip that and have a part of the county work directly with veterans organizations to build up a database, then anybody that comes to the county goes, cool, we'll hire you and we'll work with you. Take a look at all these people first. When you're hiring, just look into this database first. I think that's something that could work not only for veterans, but could extend to people who are either relocating here and just got here, or our homeless population, a lot of whom were quite powerful in their previous lives, and something pulled them apart or pulled them down, and it could help them get back on their feet. But flipping that LinkedIn on top, it's your job to find us, and instead saying, here's a pool of qualified people, search it however you want, and let's hire some of these veterans.
Thank you again for being here. My question is a little longer. I'm Tim Ross with the Nevada Veterans Association. North Las Vegas Airport is owned and managed by Clark County. The Clark County Department of Aviation is planning to extend the runways to accept larger private jets like the Gulfstream 650 and the Gulfstream 800. Bill Gates owns two of the Gulfstream 650s. That's the kind of folks that own those. These are larger jets that the airport cannot currently accept. The airport has obtained a $200 million grant from the FAA to complete this upgrade. In order to make more money, the airport is considering taking over the hangars that are owned by veterans and others at the airport at the end of their lease without compensation. Do you think the airport should be allowed to use these federal funds to effectively evict the veterans and others from the airport instead of renewing their leases as they have done in the past, just to make more money over there, taking their private property without compensation? Or should the airport renew the veterans' leases for them and others as they did in the past? Please answer and explain.
I think it's a fair question, and it's a good point on how some of the time when we're expanding and trying to go bigger, we forget about the people and the places and the things that got us where we are in the first place. So the short answer is I think we should renew those leases. Now, without having looked deep into this issue, I think it is important to also look at how that might need an upgrade or might need a limit or might need a 5 or 10-year plan to adjust those leases. But I see no reason why we should be using it to try and push them out and revitalize those spaces for somebody that's going to pay 7 or 8 or 9 times what they are. If there's a budget shortfall with the goal that we want for that airport, let's find another way to work into it or change the way we're going to develop the airport. There's, and I'm talking without full knowledge here, but there's always a way to find a compromise between the existing interests, the current stakeholders and the future stakeholders, and all the stakeholders in between, including those that use or need the airport.
Thanks. I think this is a more county-wide global conversation, and I don't have visibility, obviously, into whether or not those conversations are taking place, but I understand North Las Vegas Airport's experiencing the same challenge. So we've got Harry Reid, and then we've got the Henderson Executive Airport as well. So certainly tenants who are in place who have been made promises need to have those promises kept. They need to be kept, and leases should be renewed. I would imagine that with the onboarding of the Ivanpah Airport, there's probably a place for some of those larger jets to go, since it's identified as largely a cargo type airport. I don't see why larger jets, because that's what it's specifically going to be designed for, couldn't have hangars there as well. That would tie into my comprehensive transportation plan that I have for Clark County. If you go to any other major metropolitan area like Denver or DC or Atlanta, travelers know that it's a 30-minute transportation time into major downtown city. Like, we're different because our airport's right in the middle of downtown Las Vegas, but there's no reason why we can't kind of retrain our travelers and have a really great system of transportation, a light rail system that can move travelers from an Ivan Airport into Harry Reid seamlessly, just like Denver does from Denver to downtown Denver or Atlanta does. I think that this is part of an overall more complicated, comprehensive transportation plan that needs to be developed with the county, but we do need to make sure that we're taking care of the tenants who are already in place at the airport.
All right. Martin Walker, Nevada Veterans Association. You told me to skip you and come back to you last.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
Okay. You can go. All right. All right. Every candidate says affordable housing is a priority, yet we see a clear divide on how to solve the issue. Nevada's currently ranked second in the nation for cost burden of renters. Your opponent, Ms. Kasama, as an assembly member, voted against all of the tenant-based bills out of concern for investors, while the rest of you, to some degree or another, are calling for expanded tenant protections and measures that would make housing security more attainable for the working class citizens. My question for you, when it comes to land use variances and county funded projects, can you name at least one specific protection or regulatory cap you would support to ensure that public funding for developers actually results in stable long-term housing for residents rather than just more units for corporate landlords to manage? So I think it's your turn to start first. Is it? It doesn't matter.
All right.
Yours? All right.
No, fair enough. So I've had a lot of conversations with a variety of different developers, from Howard Hughes to Jay Bloom, who are working on what I like to call attainable housing instead of affordable housing, right? Because at the end of the day, we want people to have that attainability pathway so that they can become homeowners if that's what they choose to do. I agree that corporate and investor landlords are a challenge for Clark County. I served as a foreclosure mediation specialist in 2008 and stood up against finance banks that were trying to take families' homes away from them, because our families are the cornerstone of our community. And if we don't keep families in place and kids in school, we're just continuing to exacerbate the issue. So I would be very, very supportive of making sure that in Commission District F and throughout the county that there's special attention is paid to making sure that we've got appropriate different types of attainable housing options. And I've heard everything from tiny homes to communities that are a little farther outside the city to ability to lease property with the idea that they would transition into their own independent housing opportunities. I'm currently exploring and developing what a more comprehensive plan for housing would look like, but I'm open to all of those ideas, and I think that solutions start with Commission District F.
This is a fun one. I like this one. This is a spot where we have a lot of opportunity to get creative. There are a lot of parcels in Clark County right now that are infill. There's a lot of land that's not connected to sewer, so it's very difficult to develop on it. So this kind of ties both into water, which is one of my other key issues, and then transportation and the roads that lead to those issues that need to get torn up so we can build to those areas. I have 3 that I'll just name for this one so we can carry through. And one of those is around the legislation on what kind of homes can be built. Up until recently, there's a company called Boxable that works here in town. They're great. We couldn't have them in town until a couple of months ago when they finally said, okay, we can have those. And at the same time, we're watching legislation at the national level remove the need for a chassis on a motorhome, which gives us a chassis on a mobile home, which opens up possibilities for prefab construction. That kind of construction is more affordable and faster to put on a lot. So I'm in huge support of those things. Another thing we've done recently that I think needs a good look and some expansion is the County Land Trust. They're doing their first one down near Mountain's Edge, and they're looking at putting that in. The county maintains ownership, so the properties can't be bought by a corporation. They need to be bought by people who will live there and only own the house. And the last one, which is on infill, I want to put an end to land banking. So if you have a piece of land, you have to give a proposal and say, this is what I'm going to do with it. This is how long it's going to take. You can't sit on it for 30, 40, 50 years and hope that your kids can inherit it and then sell it for $2 million when you bought it for $10,000. Thank you.
TK Crabb, Veterans in Politics. My question is going to be very short and sweet, but very important. With ongoing strain on the Colorado River, should there be a cap on new development tied to water availability? Becky, you first.
You can go first if you like. I don't mind. Okay.
So I think that we are poised for growth, and that's just the reality of it. So knowing that we're going to continue to have growth in Clark County, we need to look at what our different levers are, and that's water smart, water conservation, and making sure that we're developing in smart and sustainable ways. Maybe that includes a cap, but I think we need to be very careful with the way that we use our water, and we need to be more mindful of how much of our water we give away to other states, because that's part of that more complicated piece as well. We're giving a lot of our water credits to California. Maybe we should start not worrying so much about California and taking better care of Nevada, because a strong economy is a growing economy. And so we have to have a certain amount of growth. So just having kind of like per capita growth limitations, I think creates another subset of problems to deal with. So I am for smart, balanced, manageable growth, looking at smart ways to continue to use our water and appropriate ways to use our water, which would be looking at the Colorado River Commission and figuring out how we get back what we're owed.
I'm excited about this one. I like this one. So my platform, I've always said my platform is what the F, and it's water, housing, and transportation. Those are the things that I focus on. Those are the things that I talk about. On the subject of water, we all know the Colorado River is a mess, but I will give a lot of credibility to the lower basin states. They've done a really good job with conservation and activity beyond some of the uses towards almonds, alfalfa, and problematic exports. The upper basin states have refused to kind of engage or even diminish their water use in any appreciable way. Utah is one of the highest per capita water use states in the country. When you look at that and you look at what we've done here in Las Vegas, what we've done here in Clark County, that should be our export. Our export should be the technology to reduce, reuse, and recycle water. Taking out turf in California is just as effective there at stopping water use as it is here. Recycling all that water that goes down the drain and putting it back up into the water system, that's something that we need to do. We have a project right now with San Diego where we've gotten it off the ground, and they're using our systems and our technology, and we've put money into it. And in return for that money, we're getting credit back into Lake Mead from San Diego. They don't have to pump it. We just help them reuse it, and we get it. Let's do that with Utah. Let's do that with Colorado. Let's get everybody on the line playing for the line. And we can almost get back to what are riparian water rights instead of senior water rights and allocated water rights and forgetting about the tribes and just letting people have whatever they want. That's my stance.
Yeah, you touched on something that's near and dear to my heart with the Colorado River and water, and well, that's not my question. I think you answered that pretty well. But don't forget that farming and the agriculture part of it is what feeds you.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you talk about the usage of alfalfa. It's that's what feeds your dairy cows. You drink milk, that's what they eat. So, but anyway, my question is this: do you think that in your District F, your geographical boundaries, your demographics, your ethnical demographics in District F are gerrymandered to give the other party an advantage?
So I'm going to take a quick 10 seconds because I just want to touch on the first thing that you mentioned. I think you knew I was going to go with that too. My problem's not with growing alfalfa for feed. My problem was the alfalfa that's contracted by the Saudi government to be shipped over there and feed Saudi horses. I'm perfectly fine with alfalfa grown and kept in country, but there's a large amount of alfalfa that's grown in Arizona and shipped all the way to, because they can't grow it. Exactly. So I'm with you. I'm not against feeding their cows. I like feeding their cows. As far as District F, I have my map here, and I don't know why we have half of Anthem. Like, this is a very strange map. It is strange how they're organized. I think D and E have it the worst in terms of makeup. They're the most split, where they have a giant Democratic imbalance against the Republicans. The other districts are pretty even split on Democratic and Republican, with large constituencies that are no party or independent. And having that split, there's no political reason for this. We can make much better boundaries. I do think that our retread here had a lot of compromises that push neighborhoods off and into each other. I mean, you can look at how it reaches. It's almost an F. Yeah, that's why we call it District F. There's parts where we have half of a neighborhood and a house across the street's going to be different, and it's unusual, the variety of conversations I have and the needs of this county. They're very varied. And then we go all the way to Sandy Valley. So
I think the very nature of your question really emphasizes the problematic nature of the district, right? I'm nonpartisan. I represent nonpartisans or others, which is 47% of the district, and we got no say in how that was mapped because there are no nonpartisans in the legislature who created the map. So from my perspective, the two parties are going to continue to wage their political battles. And in the meantime, it's the nonpartisans that are going to roll up their sleeves and go to work and take care of the day-to-day business in the community.
Hello again, Jeff Lustig with Veterans in Politics International. Clark County government controls zoning approvals, airport leases, public contracts, grants, licenses, and a multitude of other things that require you to make a decision. Those decisions can make certain private interests millions of dollars. If elected, what specific ethic rules will you personally support to make sure that commissioners cannot quietly reward donors, lobbyists, developers, unions, contractors, and all of these other individuals who have used funds to donate campaigns and to garner support of elected officials?
take that first? All I can do is point to my service as a state senator as my example for what I will do. I have an open door policy. Doesn't matter if you funded me, if you advocated against me. I, in fact, passed one of my opponent's bills when I won my Senate seat. I think that a collective community that has the ear of their elected official that can share all different viewpoints is the most attentive type of government that you can have. So I'm not one who rewards special interests. I haven't done that in my political career. And in fact, as chair of the Gaming Control Board, I couldn't do that. I used to joke that I couldn't sneeze and not have the world know it. So I'm pretty accustomed to being under the microscope. I'm pretty accustomed to making sure that everybody is knowing what I'm up to. And in fact, on my campaign and expense reports from my Senate days, when I had expenses for travel and other things, I over-reported on purpose because I would rather own it immediately through the press that I went on some travel or did something else and be able to have that conversation immediately than kind of do the gotcha thing or try to hide it. That's never been my style. So I'm going to be open. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to keep a record. I did that in the legislature, made sure as many things as I could were put on the public record so that people could go back and understand how I analyzed things, why I voted the way that I did. And I will continue to use all of those best practices that I've developed from my former public service when I win for commission.
So my undergraduate degree was in philosophy, and I had an emphasis in ethics. I'm not taking money for this campaign. I'm undonated to. I don't have a button to do it. I'm self-funded for this. So that's the beginning of my stance. But my stance isn't the important one here. The important one is what we can do to aid everybody else in government that might cross that line, right? How do we shine the light on those behaviors and pull them out of the dark? We have a remarkably easy system to go and see where the donations are going. We do not have a remarkably easy system to see where the donations are spent. If you look at the donations online, a lot of them are through a consultancy and another consultancy and another consultancy. And then the money that's coming in can be coming in through political action committees where there's not transparency. Those, I think, are some of the biggest gaps for people that are in office and running for office to get around those donations. The person who's currently in the seat was donating to political action committees that were supporting people that hadn't even announced candidacies yet. So that stuff is happening. It's happening now. And more legislation needs to be passed to pull light onto it. I don't know how much of that could be done at the county level, but I do think that there's opportunities to be vocal about it, draw attention to it. And when you're sitting there at the table, if you know about it, bring it up in room, in cathedra, and say, here is what I saw. What is that? Answer the question. That's where I would go. I'd push for more transparency.
Tim Ross, Nevada Veterans Association. Beyond tourism and gaming, which specific industry, for example, biotech or logistics or green tech, which of these do you believe Clark County is best positioned to lead in? And what tax or zoning incentives would you give to support to bring them here?
Sure. So I think lately we've been talking a lot about Hollywood and Hollywood 2.0, but I think that's kind of a false start. It has a lot of glamour. It has a lot of glory. There's several studios in town that had those capabilities, but didn't have enough business and have shut down. Even when we get something like the Beast game coming, Mr. Beast games coming and filming at the Raiders Stadium, there's a lot of talent just brought in and shipped out. So I feel like that's not as sustainable as other things we could do. To what other things we could do, and this goes to your discussion about how we get fed. We're in a weird spot here in the middle of the desert. We can bring almost nothing to ourselves except for water and things we mine, right? So one of the newest sets of tech that's out there is hydroponic multi-level indoor farming. And that kind of a thing, I think, has a huge amount of potential right here. And I think it has potential right here because we have the land and structures to support it. It's also closed loop water systems. And so it farms with less water than other systems are using. Because of that, and because of our transportation infrastructure, we can have fresher food to be able to send out not only to our local restaurants that are not only bringing in sushi and everything else from everywhere else, but to be able to ship it to the east and send it that way so that California doesn't have to produce as much. This moves more water back up the valley.
So as a Nevada State Senator, I sat on the Finance Committee and got to have an insider's view of how the Nevada state budget works and how different incentives were either successful or not successful. So I think I would start by saying I think we have the ultimate incentive already in place, which is no income tax, right? I think that this is less a discussion about taxes and incentives to incentivize businesses to come here and more about how we make a more equitable and a more interesting place for businesses to come by bolstering our healthcare, by bolstering our education system and making sure we've got the types of amenities that people who come from biotech and fintech and some of these other high-tech companies that bring good paying jobs expect to already exist in a community. I think that incentives, if they're done strategically and surgically, can work. But I do think that we sell ourselves short on the audit process. There's not really an audit process in place to see if, in fact, those incentives achieved what we hoped that they would achieve. We just kind of tend to start talking about incentivizing businesses to come. You know, Commission District F is going to be the hub of any kind of high-tech business that comes into Nevada. As you look around that 215 curve, we've got the gaming companies and the gaming manufacturers that are all situated there. We've got Harry Reid Technology Park and different joint venture funds coming in and others. That's where we're going to attract it. So we need to be smart about it and we need to be thoughtful.
TK Crabb, Veterans in Politics. Very simple question, but kind of makes you think. What is the last thing you said no to, and what did it cost you? Justin.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't realize this first. It's harder to go on last thing because there have been several major things in my life I've said no to, and it's cost me quite a bit. But if we're going with most recent thing I've said no to, it was a second dog before the wedding. It was a larger discussion, and it just came to the point where between this candidacy, I'm getting married May 16th. I have a job and thank you very much. Job and a consultancy. And so our current dog is a rescue and just went through 3 weeks of obedience school. And so we finally got her settled down. And then the next dog, it can't be until one of these things is off our plate. What did it cost me? I didn't have to sleep downstairs or anything. It's just not having a dog until then.
So I say no more than I say yes. Probably the most recent thing I said no to was to my granddaughter, and it cost me a lot of love and affection, but it was absolutely the right decision because what she wanted me to say yes to wasn't for her best benefit. And I think, in a political world, that is often the case. We're going to be asked for a lot of things, but being able to have a backbone and stand up and say no really matters. My most critical no was as chair of the Gaming Control Board when I stood up for women who were being sexually harassed and said no more. Mm-hmm. And it probably cost me my job.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you both.
All right. So in District F, a lot of people are complaining about how filthy and dirty the streets are. A lot of trash buildup. The schedule for street sweeping is quarterly, far less than the other neighbors. Can you give us your thoughts on a specific plan to address those needs to have some cleaner streets in District F? Starting with you, please.
Yeah, so I think it all comes down to that lack of amenities that Commission District F is experiencing. I feel like there's not been a whole lot of advocacy on issues that are really important to the community. So part of Earth Day, I participated in a community cleanup because I think that that's important. And so as a commissioner, in addition to street sweeping and other resources that we need to make sure that our playgrounds are clean and places where children can play and families can feel safe and our streets are clean so that we're proud of our community, I'm going to be pretty actively involved in making sure that we have some cleanup events to make sure that as citizens we have an opportunity to participate in bettering our own commission district and our environment. I think it's important. I think when people take responsibility, there's a lot more pride in the community and a lot more interest in what happens.
Yeah, I spent last Saturday clearing out about a block that doesn't belong to anybody but the county, but it's in a rural preservation area, so there's no real clear demarcation of the curb, and so it just grows weeds, especially after this year. And so we just went out there and knocked it down and then bagged it all up. And in doing that, we were talking about it amongst ourselves and going, well, how do we make this easier? How do we make it so more people do this? Because we have people that we walk with in the morning who walk with a bucket and a trash picker upper. Like, those are the people that are keeping the neighborhoods that I'm in clean. It's not the county. So how do we get the county to support that? And as we were running through, we go, okay, well, what do we do? And to the street sweeper question, maybe there's a way to set it up so after you've done a cleanup, you go, hey, there's now debris in the street. Can we get an assist on that? And so the county's just coming through and doing the heavy pickup. It just comes through and scoops it all up and gets it out of the way. And it's our responsibility as a community to get it from the weird little nooks and crannies out to a place where it's easier for the county to consume as garbage. That's one of the things I'd push for. I think there also needs to be more penalties and fines for littering, because that's quite a problem with bags and trash out there.
Just a quick follow-up for clarity. Are we to understand that your initial or part A of your remedy is to have the residents clean it up themselves?
Well, I think the residents are cleaning up themselves right now. I know in my neighborhood there are many that do. I know of many other neighborhoods that do. I know in some of the neighborhoods that have larger HOAs, especially, we touch on Rose Ranch and some of that stuff, they have people in there that are doing all that. So that secondary piece, the piece that is either street sweeping or an additional service of possibly the Parks Department to do greenways or anything, that second pickup where it's almost a bulk pickup, where you can arrange it in concert. So those that are active citizens not only get recognized, but rewarded with an even cleaner neighborhood that they're in. So it is the first step, I do think, is on us. But if you put out that incentive, it's very similar to the water department when they said, hey, we'll give you $5 if you decide to redesign everything, right? In that same way, we go, hey, if you get the trash to here, we'll come through and pick it all up.
Same question for me. So I am grateful for those committed citizens who want to do the trash cleanup, but I don't agree that it's their primary responsibility to do that. We've got in the works through Clark County where you can let the county know what's working and what's not working. We've got Parks and Rec. We've got ground crews throughout Clark County that are specifically tasked with making sure that the community is clean and a place where people want to be. We need to figure out where the system has broken down because the resources have been put in place and they are working in other areas of the county. So we need to figure out what and where and why those resources have broken down in Commission District F, and we need to recalibrate those. But just for me, I think part of community cleanup is really important. And when my husband and I walk in the park, we're doing exactly that. And we took our time on Earth Day to help take part in a community cleanup. So I think for those groups that find conservation efforts important, that want to schedule those kinds of community activities, certainly I've already supported. I'm happy to continue to support, and I'm happy to have an organized event as a commissioner to focus on cleanup in communities where the county is not only will I attend, but the county's bringing resources and support into our neighborhoods that need that little extra boost.
Yeah, Marlon Higby, past Commissioner, Lincoln County. One of the things that we're dealing with in our county is growth from technology and energy resilience. With Lake Mead falling as fast as it is, and the lack of energy, I know here in Clark County, they've got SWIP and some other AI technologies that take huge amounts of electricity. How would you deal, as a county commissioner, how would you deal with the shortage of energy?
So there are various ways to handle this, and none of them are really good. I think a pure moratorium on the data is not the strongest one, but I do think that an ask for give back. In other words, if you propose a data center here, you have to account for over 100% of your water and power. Either you have to create it, bring it in, buy rights, find it somewhere so that you're not burdening the normal citizens of the city. Because otherwise we become the wasteland that has nothing but data processing centers in it. Because there's not enough water to do evaporative cooling, which is some of them use. Closed loop cooling doesn't hold. It pollutes the water, and then the water goes into our ground table. We're in a basin, so the water doesn't get out. It's contaminated here. As the technology advances, there may come a point where this becomes less of a concern. But I think if you can set up and get enough solar panels on another piece of land you buy in the county, feed that power back in, and then take it out, okay, we're getting somewhere. And then the second part of that is if you can get that power to fully fuel your cooling, so you're not using evaporative or water loop cooling, but instead you're using more classic forms of cooling, all of a sudden you can hit those numbers. I mean, if AI is so creative, let it be creative. Solve the problem, guys.
So I'm for development and growth, and I think that a balanced economy is a smart economy, and we've learned from having gaming and hospitality and tourism be our number one economy, how sensitive that can be in a recession. And so I think the state guideline for the last couple of decades has been diversity, and data centers and other types of uses are part of that equation. But I don't think that it's smart to go in heavy on those data centers and have a unbalanced amount of those types of uses. I'm offered renewable energy as well, but what solar does for us with sunlight, the manufacture of that, it just eats up water. So I suppose we're utilizing other jurisdictions' water in the creation of solar panels to bring them into Nevada because we're not using our water. So where we get, somebody else is going to give. And I think that technology is going to get to a place where some of this is more sustainable, but I don't know that data centers are the total solution to good jobs in our economy. I think they're part of it. I don't think they're all of it. So it's part of that smart development, that managed growth, and then making sure that the companies that come in have smart business plans where they've accounted for how they're going to use our natural resources. Because like mining, once you utilize our precious resources like water, it's gone. I mean, it can rain and come back for water, but we don't have any appreciable rainfall. So, once those resources are gone, they're gone. And we need to have somebody that has a vision that's willing to take a hard look at what's right and what's wrong for the community.
Jeff Lustig, Veterans in Politics. Clark County residents see the same offenders cycling through our criminal justice system. We see arrests, we see releases. We see the judges and prosecutors fighting over releases. We see police doing their best in this community. We have a DA that some people say is too soft on crime. We have a public defense system that people can't access, and they tell us they're underpaid and underfunded. As a commissioner in Clark County, what specific change would you make to stop the revolving door, protect victims, and require the justice system to publicly prove whether it is actually reducing crime in our community and making it a safer place to live for everyone?
It's a massive question. I know, right? I don't even know where to start. I'm pretty much apoplectic because that's such a complicated question. We don't have enough police resources. We don't have enough prisons. We don't have enough correction officers to deal with what we consider to be this revolving door of crime, and that's a challenge. So in the legislature, we created some mobile units that are able to address issues immediately. We have the harbor for first-time juvenile offenders to help keep them from reoffending and want to help matriculate them into a more sustainable pathway than trying to get busted for petty crime, petty theft. I think that investing in police is really important because in addition to reducing crime in our communities, it provides safety for our tourists and they feed our economy. So we need to have more investment in police. I think, we don't really have control over what the judges are going to decide or what the DA's agenda is going to be. But the Clark County budget and the Clark County Commission does oversee Metro. So that would be the first step for looking at how we address those problems and then working with the legislature to see what we can do to make sure that they've got smart sentencing and that the social justice and the criminal justice measures make sense.
I don't know. I know. Okay, so one of the favorite words that I have when trying to think about a problem is the word manifold, because it just means there's multiple causes, there's multiple solutions, and there's no kind of quick and easy way out of some of these things. But when I think about crime and crime rates and commission of crime and punishment and how it all fits together, the pieces of it that stick out to me the most as a source of pulling on the lever is the underlying causes of crime, which is usually destitution, drug use, unhoused, domestic violence is, I don't know why I'm trying to make D's. We'll leave that alone. But you have these various causes of crime. And if we start working on those, we can hopefully work towards a lower incidence of crime. If we start looking at the pathway of people that are repeat offenders, instead of just processing through the system, can we put something on the side of the system that goes, you've been here 8 times. It's for the same thing over and over. They've given you a program that hasn't worked. They've given you a program that hasn't worked. Let's try one more aggressive program that is some kind of an in-house thing where they're living somewhere and helping being taken care of. That's not quite prison. It's like half prison, where they're committed, and they have to work through the program with supervision, make an accountability piece there. And then as far as the last piece on sentencing, I've never been a fan of retributive justice. I've always been a fan of rehabilitative justice, and I understand that that's a difficult one to reach as well. So we'll leave it at manifold.
Tim Ross, Nevada Veterans Association. Recent data shows corporate landlords own a significant percentage of single-family homes in Clark County. Do you support any county-level measures to prioritize individual homeowners over institutional investors, and what are they?
Yeah, so I worked for one of them. I worked for American Homes for Rent, and if you want to know how they feel about me, look at where they have put their money. They have donated to a Republican primary candidate, and they haven't even called me because they never really enjoyed what I said about some of that stuff. My point here, though, is that there's this interesting split between investor class and like large investors. When you look at some of the reports that have come out on the research of where those properties are held, there are a huge number of people that hold 8, 9, 10 properties. There's a huge number of people that have 50 properties. And then there's these couple of corporations that have 5,000 properties, 6,000 properties. And so when you put them all together, you have this strange gradient between giant corporations, Blackstone and American Homes for Rent, Invitation Homes, Progress Residential. And then on the other side, LLCs and incorporations that have 10 to 100. And so how do you, in a fair way, parse those out and give them an opportunity? All that to say, in direct response to your question, I do think it is worth limiting corporate ownership of homes. And I do like that we have the county land trust being tested out. It's a nice way to have ownership of the home and hold on to it. I also like what Touchstone Living is doing. They have a program where it's massively affordable to buy the home. Some of them are no money down. But in that space, you have to live there. You can't rent it out. You can't sell it to a corporation. You have to sell it next to somebody who's going to live there. And that's only holding for the first and second lease, or first and second mortgage, but it's another option.
So my grandchildren live in Commission District F, and I really want them to stay. And I'm really troubled that average Nevadans are finding it very difficult to find housing, quality housing, and attainable housing. And so I think that the county can look for ways to make sure that individuals and Nevadans are able to hold homes. When I was a mediator, I worked very, very hard to make sure that corporations didn't take homes away from people, banks and others who weren't going to live in the homes, didn't care about the homes, were just going to repackage them, securitize the mortgages, and sell them to whoever was going to pay the highest price for those houses. So I think it's something that really needs to be addressed and better addressed through the county. I'm not sure today what those right answers are, but I'm committed to finding those answers. I like an idea that we have housing projects that require physical presence in the land, but we have a democracy, and that's the push-pull, right? That's the challenge. We believe in people being able to come in and buy property. We believe in a system of civil rights, and so finding that balance to how we come up with housing solutions that everyday Nevadans are able to invest in their own community through homeownership to the extent that they want to, and making sure that people who, because of the system of democracy, have the right to come in and afford housing if that's what they want to do is what is going to be really important at the county in terms of policy and creating ordinance to address the problem.
TK Crabb, Veterans in Politics. If you had to cut part of the county budget today, what would you cut first? Becky.
Such a fascinating question. I don't want to show my hand too much, but and the Southern Nevada Health District does a fabulous job, but I think they've kind of exceeded their mandate perhaps a little bit, especially when they overreached into septic, which is such a critical issue for a variety of different areas in Commission District F, both in the urban as well as the rural communities, trying to require these annual inspection fees that are cost prohibitive for the people that live in those particular areas. So I guess it's not so specific to the Southern Nevada Health District as it would be to make sure that the different entities that the commission oversees are not exceeding their mandate and just looking for additional things to regulate or work on, because all of that requires additional employment. And I think our number one cost in the county is payroll, right? Our people. And we want to keep our people employed, but we don't need to overstep our mandate and continue to grow and overregulate.
It's challenging to try and propose any cuts, knowing that there are jobs, there are lives, there are things that people are taking advantage of on the line. It's any answer I give, somebody will have issue with. I do agree with Becky on the Southern Nevada Health Department's overreach. And so if we're strictly cutting and there's no opportunity to raise more funds, then it's just shaving all of the services. And unfortunately, that means even cutting watering the parks. Like, if we drop 5 minutes off of all of the park watering schedules, it'll be a little drier, but we'll save money there. If we cut 5% off of all of the hours that we're funding for payroll, like that's a massive one. If I could propose, especially on the septic issue, I think one of the things we're missing there is that we can make that a bilateral win. Instead of forcing those existing residents to shift, we give them an option. Next time you sell your house, we get 2%, and we'll put it all in right now. Take a bond out, securitize it against that future, and then let them choose. Because there are some of those 13,000, 14,000 homes that don't have access to the sewer lines. And so I think moving in that direction is helpful for increasing those funds while at the same time providing a service. And opportunities like that abound inside of our county and inside of District F.
Thank you.
Martin Walker, what was loud? Martin Walker, Nevada Veterans Association. All right, so you mentioned CBAs earlier. So there's criticism against the CBAs from some people. Many residents feel that these agreements lack teeth, specifically regarding best effort clauses that allow developers to dodge local hiring or mentorship quotas. Most CBAs are signed between the county and a developer, leaving the residents with no legal standing to sue if the deal is broken. To give these agreements some actual teeth, what are your thoughts on mandating that every CBA includes a third-party beneficiary clause? This would give our local neighborhood associations and youth advocacy groups the legal right to take a developer to court themselves if the mentorship or local hiring promises are ignored. I'll start with you.
I like the idea. I do agree that there's a lack of teeth. There's a lot of broken promises in the history of agreements with developers. There's stuff even with the Summerlin Master Association where we're still owed buildings from contracts we signed years ago. And as those kind of accrue and push forward, we don't have a mechanism. And then we end up in positions like we're seeing Las Vegas and Clark County fight over who's going to pay settlements. And that's kind of what happens because the developers have that big legal axe to swing. So putting in a third party is a viable path to that, where you say there's a natural interest in this and a stakeholder that is the residents of that area. I'd be wary of giving it to full HOAs, but rather a plurality or a quorum of residents that could come forward and hold suit with certain boundaries for standing. I would be in support of that.
So what you're talking about is a private right of action. And I like the idea of teeth. I'm really concerned about the private right of action because as we saw the $80 million settlement for a developer, we're going to be giving individual neighborhoods an ability to sue the county or to sue the developer. And that's going to increase costs. That's going to increase litigation. And I don't know that, I'm an attorney and I don't think litigation, you're not going to get your best outcome in litigation. You go to litigation when the two parties can't work it out and you give it to a judge to make their best decision. So I don't know that I'm a fan of that. What I will say, though, is that Everett, Massachusetts, when the wind company went in, had community benefit agreements, and those community benefit agreements had teeth, and Everett has been transformed. I teach gaming law and policy, and I teach land-based casinos at Boyd School of Law, and I've been teaching community benefit agreements for a really long time because I think if done correctly, they can have teeth. And they can dramatically improve and change a community. So I would be about looking to communities where they work and they've been successful and figuring out what we need to do. Because at the end of the day, it's the county that needs to be responsible. It's the commission that needs to stand up and hold those feet to the fire and make sure that those community benefit agreements are impactful and successful. I know this is not really a huge consolation, but the citizens have the ultimate authority because they can change out the commissioners. And that's essentially what's being done in this race. So, ultimately through the voting ballot box, there's where the ultimate accountability is. But that's little comfort when other issues are, pressing.
We got time? I'm going to throw you an easy one. I'm going to give you a chance to. This is Varlin Higbee, past commissioner, Lincoln County. What most disappoints you of the seated commissioner in District F right now?
How long do we have? 3
minutes or whatever it is.
He's got a great name. His first name. Not the Jones part. The deleted texts were atrocious. That as a lawyer, that seems insane to me that they were ever stricken from the record. And then the latest turn where he came out and supported a former Republican running as a Democrat who hasn't in public said why that shift happened. And he backed her before she was announced, before anybody else was announced. So there was no analysis or thought. There was a connection and an approval and relationship without being vetted. So I don't like the secrecy. I don't like the stuff that's hidden. I like the idea he had for a bike park in the Southwest, but it's not done. I don't like that either. So those are my 3 things that I'll kind of push against Mr. Jones on.
So my biggest challenge with the current seat holder is what I feel is a lack of advocacy. I feel like Commission District F has resources adjacently. James Regional Park is a perfect example. It's on the border between Commission District A and Commission District F, and guess what? It is in fact in Commission District A. So we don't have a lot of the amenities for our communities that other commission districts have. Our closest community center to state line is Spring Mountain and Durango, Desert Breeze Park. Our closest fire to state line that actually works and functions is in Mountain's Edge. Our closest substation for police, Rainbow and Windmill, right? So what does that mean? It means that all the way through Southern Highlands, there's a lack of resources, and worse, in our rural communities where they could really use the support, there isn't any. It's a 38-minute response time from South Point Casino to get an ambulance into Sandy Valley if there's a medical emergency, and I am told that is fast. So if you're having a stroke or a heart attack, you're in trouble, and sometimes we'll fly in a helicopter, as should be necessary, but I mean, that seems like there are better solutions to help get resources into the community. So I really feel like Commission District F has not been advocated for, and that's my greatest disappointment.
Right. Martin Walker, Nevada Veterans Association. I'm going to give you one last question here. Kind of somewhat answered this a little bit earlier, but we'll see how it goes here. So veterans treatment courts allow justice-involved veterans to receive treatment for PTSD or substance abuse rather than standard incarceration. The county commission doesn't run the courts, but they decide how to supplement them with the general funds allocated for physical space, personnel budget, and the grant writing infrastructure that makes them possible. The program is heavily reliant on competitive BGA grants for recovery support services that the state budget doesn't cover. Without permanent recurring funding, these programs face a bottleneck and risk incarceration for veterans who benefited from diversion opportunities. Given this bottleneck, can we get your commitment for making Veterans Treatment Court a protected line item in the county's general fund, ensuring these life-saving diversion opportunities are never again dependent on the uncertainty of one-time federal grants?
So I'm a big fan of diversion courts. As a state senator, I supported the Harbor, which is that juvenile justice diversion process that I talked about. I'm also a big fan of the gambling diversion court. As a legislator, in addition to a county issue, this is a state issue, and the legislature should be able to help provide some of that solution. But yeah, I think it needs to be a line item. I don't think that anybody's interests are served when people are unnecessarily incarcerated. We know from decades and decades of history that incarceration, especially when there's some mental illness concerns or other illnesses or injuries that have occurred because of service to the country occur, that we need to step up as citizens and we need to support those people who put their lives on the line. When we were in the military, there was a saying, we live like you won't, so you can live like nobody else can. And I think that there needs to be some respect for that sacrifice. And I don't know if you haven't lived in the military life that you truly understand the sacrifices that people make to go live in a cardboard box in the middle of a desert on the other side of the world, or in their Humvee for 2 weeks away from their family while the National Training Center is engaging in training exercises with groups around the world. So I would be very supportive of that.
Referring to my earlier answer about general feel for how justice works, I have no problem advocating for not just that, but expanding the diversionary courts and the support for it. Yeah, absolutely. I'll just give it that.
All right. Well, this concludes the interview portion of today's event. I'd like to give each one of you 1 minute to do a closing remark. I'll start with you, please, sir.
In Clark County District F, we face the same problems most of the county does and also most of the state of Nevada does, and that's water, housing, and transportation. If we can get those things locked in, and I believe we can, I have ideas towards that end. You've heard some of them here today. But if we can move in that direction towards securing those three things, I believe we have the capacity not just for the next 1 million residents that'll be here by 2060, but the next 1 million beyond that. If we continue to think not just of how to support our current systems, but make those systems work for a larger number of people, every time we do that, we iterate forward and we iterate for the next generation and the support of the future of Clark County and Las Vegas.
I'm Becky Harris, and as your next commissioner, I will advocate for good jobs, high-paying jobs, the ability to get the necessary training for those jobs, and to help stabilize families, because I believe that if we don't have the ability to put food on our table and take care of our own, the rest of society is going to crumble. And I think that starts with attainable housing. I think that is also achieved through a comprehensive public transportation system that we don't currently have. We move 500,000 people to and from the Strip every single day. We can find better, more economical, more affordable ways to do that. And when you look at what is going on in the world today with rising groceries, rising fuel costs, rising transportation costs, we need to step in and we need to make sure that our families and the individuals in our society are stabilized. And I'm gonna work for that. So managed growth, public infrastructure, good jobs, strong schools. Thanks.
All right, this concludes today's event. Once again, I'd like to thank and recognize our sponsors, Judge Mary Perry, Clark County District Court, Family Division, Department P, Christine Brewer, Clark County District Court, Family Division, Department S, Veterans in Politics International, and Nevada Veterans Association, and our additional sponsoring partners for the leadership, support, and dedication to veterans and the integrity for our non-judicial process. Thank you.
Join us every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, live stream on Facebook.